haven't already, please go ahead and self-mute your phone or computer. And we'll be getting. We are the company that has worked with the Watt family and the United Way of Greater LA to design and manage the LA Homelessness Challenge. We help power the website as well as a platform for you all to use to submit your applications. I do want to let you know that this session is being recorded and will be made available from the news and update section of lahomelessnesschallenge.org after the session is concluded. So here's our agenda. We'll start with an introduction of the partners and the reasons behind the LA Homelessness Challenge. We'll dig into the application as well as the scoring process and the criteria that will be used to score all of your proposals. Then we'll open it up to Q&A, where you can ask some questions through the chat. We'll answer as many of them as we can as possible. We also will direct you to places on the website where quite a few of the answers to your questions live. You can also email us at questions@lahomelessnesschallenge.org, and we'll be able to respond there, especially if there are questions that are specific to your account or to your proposal. Please email us directly at questions@lahomelessnesschallenge.org. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. First, we'll have Jason Morgan from Common Pool to introduce Common Pool as well as the Watt family.
Good morning, everyone. For those on the West Coast, good morning. We are proud to walk you through this webinar. You know, the LA Homelessness Challenge was the result of a lot of hard work and the very, very specific sponsorship of both the Watt families at Watt companies, as well as kind of the key partnership that we built with United Way and the Home for Good Funders Collaborative. Our company, Common Pool, designs these kind of competitions around the world, actually even beyond around the world. We're doing some work for NASA right now to put new technology on the International Space Station. And to put some context into this, when we did our NASA competition, it took us about say 3 to 5 months to design the requirements and to produce the website that drives that competition. When we got into homelessness in Los Angeles, we purposefully kind of spent a lot of time engaging stakeholders, engaging people that have been funding efforts in this space for a long time, talking to people that were working on the front lines. And the amount of time it took to both design this and to be very thoughtful about respecting all of that previous effort took over a year. So anybody that, from our perspective, anybody thinks that this is easy work, you know, we're prepared to say it's harder than rocket scientists to do this right. And I think everyone that is kind of prepared to submit a valid application already knows that. And so what our goals were, and as we set out to design this competition, was to make it a little bit different than maybe a more traditional or typical RFP. The principles that guided us through this process were to deliver a very open, transparent, and fair process for you. Something that would be value additive for you, and something where you knew exactly what the implied costs to participate were by going to this public-facing website, and you knew exactly what kind of benefits you might get out of this, even if you don't win one of the grants that we're offering. And so to illustrate that, I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to walk through the website. I'm very hopeful that everyone on this call has already spent a lot of time on this website, but I'm going to talk about some of the strategic intent here before we get into the technicalities. So again, focusing on open, transparent, and fair, and how we've realized those goals. When people come to this website, their first task is to register. But before someone registers, they really want to see kind of what they're getting into. So the first question that we always get is, you know, what's in this application? What do I have to do? And if you go to the menu from the homepage, you can pull down a link to the application itself. Now, this is not the application that you're actually going to fill out. This is the body of the application, so you can understand what the implied costs are to do this. You can understand kind of how you have to go about filling this out, and the partners you have to engage, and the team you have to be prepared to put together. Some of those members actually have to have already worked on the front lines of homelessness in LA. So we're very intentional about both the sequence of these questions and the content of each prompt. or requirement in that application. And so spending time, at this point, you're all registered. So we'll get to how you spend time actually filling it out on the back end of this platform. But spending time here is usually the first course of action. Inevitably, when we get, through that, then the next question is, okay, well, then I know what I've got to do. Now, how am I going to be scored? Okay. And if you can go to the menu, and I believe that we have whoever's driving the presentation. If you can go to the menu and click on trait or scoring process, right? You're going to see two things. First, you're going to see the trait scoring rubric, which is the actual tool that our judges are going to use to score every valid application. And we provide that to you because we've realized when we can be more transparent about what we're expecting from you, a lot of you are smart enough to start kind of reverse engineering that process and start looking at how we're defining the higher end of these scoring ranges. So the first trait in this 4-trait rubric is game changing. To clarify that label, game changing, we have a series of questions that help to kind of reveal our intentions for why this trait is the first one in the rubric and why it's important to us. Then you have a 5-point scale from 0 to 5 with anchor words on each end of that 5-point scale. And as you toggle through these single integer scoring ranges, you're going to see that these pre-populated definitions appear, right? So a judge that's going through this process is going to say, well, I think this application may be a 4.5. And when they rest that dot inside of the 4 to 5 single integer range, this definition pops up and they know that this is what they're telling that applicant. But in order to justify that resolved score, every judge assigned to you is going to have to also enter a comment for each of those scores in this rubric. So the value proposition here is looking at our very highly credible judges, realizing they have to use this specific tool, realizing you're going to get scores and comments from every assigned judge that is going to be reading your application. And when you look at how we multiply that out over each of the traits in this rubric, as you scroll down through this rubric, you can see kind of the other elements of what we're trying to do. And in our experience, again, running these prizes all over the world, this can actually have an inductive effect on people's applications, on how they perceive their proposal or their plan. We don't want you just cutting and pasting some boilerplate proposal that you've written for some other grant. We want you to really be thoughtful to reflect on this language and maybe to start weaving this language into your other materials and to start accepting some of these definitions that we've put forth, such as what we mean by scalable, right? We think scalable is a huge part of this, and you'll see it woven throughout the rubric. You also see it in a dedicated trait. You'll also see it woven into the application in various forms, okay? So once people have already determined, here's what I got to do, here's how I'm going to be scored, then there is a certain segment of the registrant pool that says, well, how do I know this is fair, right? You're promising all this fairness. So we go to pretty extraordinary lengths to describe exactly what we mean by that. So if you go to scoring process and then you go to a level playing field, you can see that we are implementing a protocol here, which is the normalization protocol. And we offer both a technical and a layman's description of that. And what that means is that everyone who submits a valid application gets assigned 5 judges, right? And those 5 judges have to provide scores and comments against the rubric. But then the question comes up, what if I, as one applicant, get assigned 5 judges who always score really low? These are your more critical, circumspect judges. They're just hard graders, right? While my other competitor right over here, by coincidence, gets assigned 5 easy scores, people that always score between 4 and 5 on a 5-point scale. So we address that mathematically to ensure that it's a distributed process. Not every judge is looking at every application. But for those judges that are assigned to you versus 5 judges that may be assigned to someone else, that is normalized and that's mathematically fair. Now, we've used this protocol in many very sophisticated applications, competitions at places like MIT, the European Commission, and this has been kind of really talked about a lot in terms of this technical approach. Our goal here is to reveal it to you so you know we're being fair. Lastly, once people understand that, then they want to see kind of who these judges are, right? And another way to reveal any bias as we impanel those judges is that if every judge was, say, a chemist, right, you'd know that we were looking for a chemistry solution, right? So in this case, when you look at who those judges are, we tried to pick out judges who actually represent other foundations. And those other foundations have their own discretionary capital. Those other foundations are going to have access to the total pool of the applicants. And they're also going to be able to kind of think about how your proposal may fit into their plan. And we actually have included a preface to the introduction to the application itself, where we talk about how we've already met with those other funders and judges, how they all know that, you know, the expectation is they take your applications very seriously. So this has never been about the opportunity just to give away 2 grants at $200,000 each. This has always been about creating a community of practice, creating a convening force, and bringing together a lot of people that know the field very well and that want to see your best idea. You know, we put in a timeline in this website as well. So if you're spending time there, you know that the way this is going to work is once you've submitted your application and we've stacked or rank ordered all of them, we're going to be picking off a certain number that are going to go to a pitch event at the end. And there's going to be coaching and training. There's going to be an opportunity to make sure that those that score at the highest end of that stack receive some other supplemental services as we get ready to present to an audience that will include many other funders as well. So I'll just end there before we get into technicalities and just say, this is really about doing things differently. This is about trying to create an experience for you, which isn't a waste of your time, which helps you form kind of and get feedback as you go through articulating your plans, and hopefully gets everybody prepped for this large other influx of funding through H and HHS that we're all waiting for, that will, you know, hopefully address some of these same scalability questions that we're asking in this program. So thanks for your time, and Cristobal, we can hand it off to the next speaker.
Excellent, thanks so much, Jason. We also have joining us Emily Bradley, the Program Officer for Home for Good at the United Way of Greater LA. Emily, did you want to share some words, please?
Sure. I think we just wanted to share our excitement over this process and give a little context to who we are for those who are unfamiliar with us. So United Way of Greater Los Angeles has been based in Los Angeles for decades and working really to ensure there are solutions to poverty across interconnected issues, education, financial stability, and housing and homelessness. And in our housing and homelessness work in 2010, we launched our Home for Good initiative, which is a county-wide effort to end homelessness that's cross-sector and really solutions-focused. How do we ensure that people have the services and supports to get into housing and stay in housing that fits their needs? And so as we kind of look at this challenge, we see a new opportunity to infuse some of your ideas into this system, to build on what we've already developed, and to further amplify our work together to end homelessness in Los Angeles County. We're really excited about this opportunity to bring in new ideas, both locally and nationally and even internationally in some cases, and really to see that be actualized on the ground. So we're excited that this is not just an ideas competition, but also a way that we can support implementation of your ideas in the long term. And ultimately, like we said, as Jason shared, there'll be a
Oops, Emily, we lost you there for a bit. I think we lost Emily.
Okay. We'll get her back. I see that she's still on the line. There she is. Okay, thanks, Emily. Emily, do we have you on the line?
No sound. It appears that she's speaking, but there's no sound. Okay, well, we'll hang tight a bit. But you know, on behalf of the Watt family who has sponsored, you know, this competition and provided the funding, they're very excited to launch the LA Homelessness Challenge and to partner with United Way and Common Pool to, you know, to fund some, you know, the brightest and best ideas around homeless services in Los Angeles. And so Emily, we'll have you join again soon, but we'll hand the mic over to Jordan. He is with Common Pool, and he will take us through the application, share some tips and tricks with completing and submitting your application. Hopefully, all of you have had some time already to spend on the back end once you've logged in, and he'll be taking us through that as well. And then we'll be answering some questions.
Okay, thank you, Christabel. As she said, I'll just go ahead and walk you through the application primarily and show you a few things about that that'll be helpful to you. First of all, once you log in, I'll just go ahead and go to where you'll get to the dashboard page. So once you log in, as many of you probably already know, you'll see this dashboard page on the system. One thing that will pretty readily tell you how you're doing on your application so far, if you haven't completed it, is this application box. In this case, it tells me I'm 78% complete. I also can tell that I'm not done because it says not submitted at the top. Once it is completed and submitted, that will then say that it has been received or has been submitted in the system. To edit your application at any time, you can click on this continue button in that box, or you can go up to the application link at the top right of the page. Once you're on this page, a couple things to take note of right away is the, first of all, submission deadline. There's just a reminder there so that you know all the time when you come to this page when you have to have that submission completed. And status. This will let you know how many of these requirements on this page you have completed. So in this case, 18 of 23. If you get to the end of the application and there isn't a submit button or it's not allowing you to submit it, that's one place you can check to see how many requirements are complete. We'll get back to that in a minute. Also, you can at any time click this view application as a PDF. It will open a new window and load a PDF version of your application that you can then download, save, whatever you want to do with that to be able to keep for your own records or share it with someone else. There's several different types of requirements on the application. Just be sure to thoroughly read the requirement before filling it out to make sure that you're meeting the requirements for that particular section. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and put my name in here. Notice right now before I finish this that there's this checkbox at the top left of this requirement. Once you complete a requirement, a check mark will appear there. So once I enter this, notice that we have a check mark. So that's one of the best ways to be able to tell that you've completed that requirement, both completed it and completed it correctly. If it's not completed correctly, it will not be counted as complete. One of the main forms of entry on here will be the text box. So to fill out a text box, you have several different options there to help you. So you can format it in many different ways, like you would with a Word program or a word processing program on your computer. You're welcome to play around with these tools as you wish to do the formatting however you'd like. If you'd like to add images to your application or to a particular section, you can click on this little icon right here. It will allow you to select an image from your computer, open it, and load it. I'm just going to go ahead and click. I'm not sure I have a good image. Here's just a table of some states. We'll use that for now. So once you've loaded in an image, if you click on it, you can find the little box in the corners of the image to drag and resize that image however you would like to. I'll go ahead and remove that.
And Jordan, this is Jason. Let me jump in. You know, so you can see that there are word limits in each of these text boxes. And one of the ways to trick the system is to put in an image with words. That actually will be discounted during administrative review. You can put in an image that clarifies a statement in the narrative description, but please don't put in images that allow you to extend the word count. If you try to do that during administrative review, we will catch it and your application will be void.
Correct. Thank you, Jason. In that context, the image I just used was probably not the best example. If you do want to insert information like that, you also have the ability to put an actual table in here. So you can select a number of rows and columns and then enter your data, actual text content that will then be counted. I'm going ahead and put some sample text in here just to complete the requirement. See if I got, oh, okay. Notice here too at the top it says 10 words next to the title of the requirement. That means you need at least a minimum of 10 words. No, you have a maximum of 10 words to complete this requirement. If you go over that maximum, you will actually not have completed it correctly, so that check mark will disappear. So if I add a few more sentences, notice that I get a red alert here that says the maximum number of words for this item is 10. So you'll need to back that off again in order to complete the requirement and have that check mark reappear. One other thing you can do here is you can copy and paste content into these requirements. So if you wish to go through here and work on your application offline and enter it later, you're welcome to do that. However, when you do, be careful that the content that is entered doesn't include hidden formatting or hidden HTML, things like that that would cause issues with the entry text box here. One way that you can do that when you're pasting content, I'll just go ahead and take some of this here, is to go into the edit menu and select paste as text. Once you select that, you'll get this message, paste is now in plain text mode. Contents will now be pasted in plain text until you toggle this option off again. So this will basically do exactly as it says. It will enter just the text and remove any formatting that may have been included.
Yeah, and Jordan, this is Jason. Let me jump in. You know, it is a very popular tactic to begin working on your application in a Word document, to have a collaborative approach to how you assign certain questions to certain team members. We encourage collaboration. We know you will have your own process before you enter data into the application requirements. However, we also recognize that there is a pattern where a lot of people wait until the last minute, sometimes even the last hours before the submission deadline. At that point, they're furiously cutting and pasting content into this form. If you choose to do that, I think you will often find that things like character counts and word counts may be slightly off, and that you will run into this deadline before you will be able to successfully complete the cutting and pasting exercise. So we strongly emphasize, please do not wait until the last hours to utilize that tactic or that approach. Please begin cutting and pasting into the application as soon as you're able, and use this as a tool to help police these word limits. It's really helpful, and don't wait till the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Move on here. You'll notice there's a few other different sections here. You can enter your contact information in the different fields provided. Once again, if those fields aren't all filled out, the check mark will likely not appear, and you'll need to review that section and make sure that it is complete. We have another one here. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in. There's some you can select a bubble. If you select other, you have the option to put additional information in 10 words or less. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down a ways here. You'll notice we have got a lot of text boxes, and we just reviewed those, so we don't really need to get into that. I've put some sample text in there ahead of time so that we don't have to do that. And trim this one down. Notice this one is over 25 words. So as I'm reviewing this, I can see that needs changed. Okay, that one's updated. There's a section here with some drop-down selections. Okay, the next section we need to talk about is this budget table or any similar table like this. On the budget table, you need to provide a line description item and an amount in US dollars. Notice down here it says the total should not exceed $200,000. So your budget needs to equal the $200,000 or should not exceed it. If it does, your requirement will be incomplete. So here I have one budget item of $200,000. Just for demonstration's sake, I'll change that. Let's put $150,000. When you enter, the best method of entry is to leave any commas, any other characters other than digits out of the entry, just to be sure that it gets entered correctly. If I want to add more, so I need, let's say I want to round it up to 200,000, I have another budget item. I need to make sure that I have a description. If I don't, it will also be incomplete. And let's say I put 60,000. My check mark still has not appeared. And once again, that's because I've now exceeded that $210,000. So if your budget for some reason won't check off as complete, check to make sure that you have a description for each item, that you don't have any. The other thing is that you don't have any open items. So if you have a completely blank item, it won't complete. Or to make sure that your budget doesn't exceed $200,000.
And Jordan, this is Jason. We know that we're going to get some applications where maybe the $200,000 that you need from this program is the last mile of funding and what otherwise would be a much larger budget. And so the next question in the section, other requirements, allows you to articulate that. So we want you to represent the discrete part of your overall budget that foots to $200,000 in the chart. But if it, for example, it's relevant that you have other funders that are going to make up any differences for that same project, you're including that under other requirements.
Thank you, Jason. I think the last item we need to cover that information is reviewed and taken into consideration when creating the video. To upload or update the video, we use what's called a YouTube video ID. The quickest way to get that is just right out of the URL. I'm going to go ahead and go over to YouTube and I'll show you real quick. So we have a previous webinar here that we can use, and in this case, on this URL, it's right after the equals sign at the very end of the website URL. So that is my YouTube video ID. If you're getting it from a little bit different of a link, so if I go ahead and click on share, in this case, it'll be everything after the backslash there, or forward slash. So if I copy that YouTube video ID and I come back to my application, I enter it in this box, be sure to then click update, the update button. If you don't, it will not update. There we go. So then your video should be right here embedded in your application. When you are done with your application, or you think you're done, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I'm sorry. So there's a couple things I want to say about the video. This is here because we want our judges to have a personal connection with the applicant. We also want to use this content to showcase a summary of your idea to other potential funders, the general public, possibly other kind of organizations that have a vested interest in this cause. Now, oftentimes people will misinterpret what we're asking here, and they'll go out and spend large amounts of money with a very highly polished production budget to create the best video they possibly can. That is not what we're expecting from you, and that is often not what wins the day. What we want from you is a very sincere, authentic explanation of the core elements of your proposal. And what we found is that when one or two people are talking into a camera for 60 seconds, explaining kind of their passion and their commitment to that proposal, those those videos usually score much higher than something that looks a little bit more like a Hollywood production set. And so really focus on sincerity, authenticity. Don't focus on doing a highly polished budget, and make it the best representation of a summary of your proposal that you can.
Thank you, Jason. Just a couple more things here that will be helpful to you, I think, is when you get to the bottom of your application, you have this preview your application as a reviewer will see it link. This will allow you to open it and view it in the format that the reviewer will see it. Just a little bit different than the PDF, but it's basically the same thing. So you can view that way, or you can also always click the preview application button here, or the view application as PDF. So as far as I know, I've completed all of my requirements. I should be done and I should be able to submit, but where do I submit? There's no submit button at the time. The submit button should be appearing right over here in this box, but it's not. Notice here it says 22 of 23, and at the top of the application, the status says 22 of 23 requirements complete. The important thing about that is we know that we have one requirement that's not complete. We might have done it, but it didn't get saved because of being completed incorrectly. And that is this item right here. I went ahead and left it at over 10 words so I could show this. So I'm going to go ahead and back this off to 10 words and being complete. Notice once I've completed all requirements correctly, I now have a submit button, submit application button. One thing to note here is once you click this, it will ask, are you ready? Because you'll no longer be able to make changes once you've submitted. This is important. Be sure that your application is 100% finalized before submitting it. Once you do, it'll turn into basically a text page that will not be editable. We can, if absolutely necessary, reopen an application, but it's not a simple process for us to do that. So it's desirable that you would only submit once you're absolutely complete. Really quickly, we'll go back to the dashboard. Well, here you can see it says your application has been received. And back on the dashboard, where the percentage complete chart is, that'll update to 100 here in a second, also says received. I believe that would be it for the demonstration of the application. So I can pass it on to anyone else or open it up for questions.
Yeah, and this is Jason. I want to say one last thing.
Sure, go ahead.
We've already kind of recognized that there's this pattern where people wait till the last minute. It's universally true. People just don't like to do their homework till the last minute, and we know that. But what I do want to say is that you'll see throughout this dashboard, there are opportunities to request technical support. If you wait until the last minute and you start representing some technical issue that you didn't anticipate, and you're putting in a technical support request within hours of the submission deadline, it is not guaranteed that you are going to get a quick response. That is the precise time when we're managing a lot of other tickets from a lot of other teams that are kind of going through this same process. And so again, for that reason and others, please don't wait to submit your application.
Hi, this is Christabel. A couple things I'll also add is that your application saves automatically as you're typing through, so no need to worry about a save button, or if you leave the page and return, your information should be saved there. And when you submit, you will not be getting an email notification. We save a little bit of email for you there. You'll just have it marked as received and submitted here on the platform on a dashboard. So you will not be receiving an email notification that your application has been submitted as well. And in terms of what happens next once you submit your application, as Jason and Emily mentioned, we have an excellent group of judges that will be scoring all of them using the trait scoring rubric. Again, all of this information is available on our website. We will be narrowing down the applications to up to 5 finalists who will then participate in a live event where they will pitch their idea in front of another panel of judges. And winners will be announced that day in November. And then Emily, if you'd like to share a little bit about what that pitch event, United Way Greater LA is our partner in this. they're hosting the pitch event for us.
Sure, and apologies to folks on the phone. I was on a different line and it cut out earlier, so apologies for that. But in terms of the pitch event on November 14th, we're really excited to invite all of the finalists who are selected through the review process to attend an event that will be built out, that will be in downtown and be built out into kind of a storytelling night that will incorporate all of the pitches from the finalists to a panel of judges who will ultimately select those for award. But it will be a public event with, obviously different stakeholders in the community, philanthropic supporters, public agencies, nonprofits. Hopefully some of you will be able to bring out your leadership and staff and general public who are interested in this area and who could get engaged and excited about your ideas. And this live pitch event will be an opportunity, again, to uplift your ideas and stories and your organizations, as well as to ultimately select a few organizations who will receive awards for to help implement their ideas. But we're really excited, again, that'll be November 14th, and ultimately we hope to invite all those who are participating in this process to attend and our finalists to pitch. Leading up to that process, we'll also be able to support organizations in helping refine their pitches so that you can present your best possible case to the judges and have an opportunity, again, to put your best face forward and your ideas, really communicate your ideas most clearly to those who are able to select for awards, and also ultimately to continue to help support you through the process of implementation.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you so much, Jordan, for taking us through the application. We do have some questions in the Q&A that we can go ahead and get started with answering. Looks like the first one, when would the funding start?
So we are asking you to put together kind of a detailed project plan and timeline. The intent is at the pitch event to name the 2 grantees that will be identified, through that pitch presentation, and the selection committee will be choosing those grantees that evening. And then shortly after that, you're going to be assigned a grants administrator at United Way of Greater LA, and they're going to sit down and talk to you about that project plan and the duration of it, as well as the associated budget. Now remember, within the constraints of the application, you can propose a long or a short budget, a long or a short project plan, but one of the traits in our rubric is looking at the feasibility of that plan and that budget. So we want you to present the budget and the plan that achieves the greatest amount of projected impact and net benefit to your target community or your priority population. But the feasibility of that is how we're kind of assessing one project plan or one budget over the other, versus, say, prescribing other elements of those project plans, which might limit certain types of proposals that we would otherwise get.
Excellent. I think that touches on one of the next questions as well. To qualify for the grant, you have to be up and running already. We do want, innovative ideas. Creativity is highly encouraged, but also things that are feasible and scalable. So, looking at the criteria, looking at the proposal questions, and determining yourself if you're a strong fit based on those different tools that we've provided for you.
Yeah, and for some people, this word kind of innovative means different things. In many cases, we have an organization that has been doing things the same way for a long time, and they're proposing to do something slightly different as part of this application. In other instances, we have something that is verifiable, that works. We already know it works, and their proposal is to scale that known solution. So the notion that you already have to be up and running, you don't already have to be up and running. But you do have to show that you've got seasoned experience doing this work. If it's a new technical approach, we strongly recommend that you put in some data to verify the projected impact of that approach. So we're not going to be taking things that are whole cloth new. We're going to be taking things where there's evidence that you're going to be able to meet your impact.
Great. Next question is about the budget. if you can add justification on the line for the line item descriptions. Yes, that is definitely encouraged. If you can add detail there in terms of, instead of just saying a lump sum, also then saying, that's for 3 staff members, not just 1 staff member, as asked here in this question. Whatever details you can provide here will make for a stronger proposal for you.
Yeah, and there's 2 places you can do that. You can put an individual line item for each staff person. So this is a senior manager over the course of this period, and you can put their salary or their FTE equivalent in there. Another way is you can put a single line item for salaries, and then in the notes section of that same budget, which is limited to, I think, only 150 characters or words, there you can try and clarify a line item. But it's probably best to make sure that the line items themselves are self-explanatory.
Great. And are there any other questions? We've got everyone.
I think there was a question that was sent directly to the organizers of the webinar, but that we're happy to share more broadly. So there was a question about the coordinated entry system. How is data gathered, primary or secondary? I will answer preliminarily, but if you need, if this is not addressing your actual core of your question, please chime in and feel free to clarify. So the coordinated entry system is a system by which we work to end homelessness in Los Angeles County. It is our centralized system where we have kind of an assessment tool, a shared database, and a shared network of nonprofits who are working to address this issue, who are utilizing these tools to help navigate people from street to home. And that system is it is our way that we're navigating people home, and it is also our main data collection tool on who's experiencing homelessness and where they're ultimately being connected to. It is data gathered directly from people experiencing homelessness and put into this system that is a countywide system and that is called the Homeless Management Information System, which is managed by our Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. And it is an immense data resource and very rich in terms of information. It is not, those who have access are those who provide direct services. It's not an open platform for data access, but there's an immense amount of information about the coordinated entry system, about people experiencing homelessness, about the issue of homelessness on the website. If you go to LAHSA, LAHSA.org, you can find all the information about the homeless count that is conducted every year, our coordinated entry system, and a lot of the dynamic data that they present there is directly related to who's experiencing homelessness, where they're going, and it's very accessible. So encourage you to look through that resource as well. And again, if that doesn't address the critical point of your question, please feel free to chime in and I'm happy to add some more context.
And the only thing I'd add to that is if you look at the actual place in the application where we talk about CES, it's under the questions, systems integration and enhancement. And what that question recognizes is that you need you to describe how you plan to utilize or enhance the CES platform as one element of your plan, right? And that we know that some people may not be prepared to address CES specific integration plans. And if they're not, they get an opportunity just to explain how your team will integrate your service model across a wider network of public and private partners, and then draw on the CES system resources. So you need to know CES, but you don't need to know it cold. We need to see that you have a plan for building on what so many other people have built already, so many other people recognize work so well. But yeah, there is some variability in terms of your sophistication or understanding of the current CES model.
Great. I think that answers all of the questions that have been posted in the chat. Of course, if you have more questions throughout the process, please email us directly at questions@lahomelessnesschallenge.org. You can also see our FAQ. And then on the platform, we have the forums where there's a lot of information as well in terms of completing the application and some of the next steps. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Again, a recording of this webinar will be made available in the news and updates section of lahomelessnesschallenge.org. Special thanks to the Watt family, United Way of Greater LA, and the Home for Good Funders Collaborative for help launching this initiative. And we really very much look forward to learning more about your work and staying tuned for more information about how we can all work together to solve homelessness in LA.